Hi, shalom everyone. So in today's readings, we hear several things, but essentially what we're going to look at today is what we really plant in our own hearts and in our own minds. So we'll begin with the first reading, and here we see that the Lord tells the prophet Jeremiah that the pride of the people of Judah will rot. So the people of Judah, we see here that they are prideful. They thought that they could do things on their own. They think that they can do things better than others, and not only others, but also God. So they began to take things into their own hands, and they forgot God. They forgot of what God had asked of them to do. They forgot of His faithfulness in the past, and they just relied on their own strength to do what they wanted to do. And so this led to their disobedience when they began to do things as they liked and not as God had asked of them to do. And when they began this, they just went at it, man. They just went at it. It's like one thing after another: adultery, false gods, and they did not repent of their ways. And through this time, we hear that the Lord saying to Prophet Jeremiah that He was close and faithful to the people of Judah, as the first reading says. But Judah wasn't faithful to God. They weren't close to God. And in the Psalms, we hear that they forgot God, and they just continued to provoke Him in all that they did, in all that they chose to do. And in today's Gospel, we hear of two parables, and one is about the mustard seed. And St. Jerome, in his writings, says that we could be likened to the man planting the seed, meaning that we plant the seed in our own hearts and then go on to nurture it so that it grows into a tree, it grows to bear fruit. This seed that we receive could be through what we hear or through what we see. And so really, what are we planting in our own hearts, and what kind of tree are we growing in our own hearts? And in the continuation of the gospel, we hear of the woman using the yeast to bake 3 measures of flour. And St. Augustine likens this yeast used with love, because when you use yeast, it allows rising in the flour, allows fermentation. And when we allow love to reside, it grows. Whatever it is, whatever that has love in it grows. And the 3 measures of flour, he likens it to our hearts, souls, and our minds. So really, when we plant these areas in love, we see it rise too. We see it grow. And like the bread that grows, our heart, our souls, our minds too will grow. So it's really like saying, let all that you do be done in love. And isn't Jesus Himself love? Like doing things with Him allows our lives, our areas of our lives, our whole lives to just flourish for His glory. So like the small mustard seed, it was a very small seed, but because it was planted and it was nurtured, it grew into something very big and something very significant. So maybe if we allow love to flow into these areas and to reside in these areas, we too could be people who glorify God in all that we do. So now we just go back to the people of Judah. They forgot God. And maybe the people of Judah is something very distant and very irrelevant to us. But maybe forgetting is something that we could relate to closer. Maybe I too find myself here at times, like when I forget things. I forget how God has been faithful to me in my life. I forget of His promises, of His faithfulness. And maybe I would also forget that He's still faithful in the waiting. And in these times, it would be easy to want to grasp at things, to take things into my own hands. But that's not what God asks of us to do. So maybe before we fall into this hole of forgetting His faithfulness to us, we could maybe make a conscious effort to recall it every day, to remember, to practice gratitude. Because really, when we remember, it's like nurturing what we have received, the seed that we have received. And so maybe we could practice gratitude in our lives and maybe see His goodness and faithfulness flourish. Although we may be in a season of waiting, may we hold on to this hope that He is a God who is faithful, and we just sing of His goodness forever. God bless.